Let me paint you a picture. You are standing outside the most anticipated sporting event of the decade. The posters are glossy. The press releases are immaculate. The league's social media team has been working overtime, crafting perfectly filtered highlight reels and feel-good montages. Every executive interview radiates optimism. Every commissioner soundbite drips with confidence about record revenues, record viewership, and the historic cultural moment the Women's National Basketball Association is supposedly living through right now. And then you walk inside the arena, and half the seats are empty. Not at a Wednesday night February game, not during a throwaway preseason scrimmage nobody asked for. We are talking about the Indiana Fever, the franchise that led the entire WNBA in attendance last year, dropping ticket prices to $12 a seat just to get warm bodies into the building for a preseason finale. $12. Less than a large popcorn at the concession stand. Less than a movie ticket for a film nobody wants to see. And even at that number, that practically give-it-away price, the upper bowl still had gaping, cavernous sections of empty orange seats staring back at the cameras like an accusation. That image tells you everything the press releases refuse to. The Women's National Basketball Association is not in a golden era. It is sitting directly on top of a pressure cooker that is about to violently detonate. And the people holding the flame are not critics, not rival leagues, not hostile media personalities. The people holding the flame are the fans themselves. The millions of everyday consumers who showed up, opened their wallets, bought the jerseys, streamed the games, and drove this sport to financial heights nobody thought were possible just 3 years ago. They showed up. And now, they are done being ignored. What we are witnessing right now, across comment sections, across social media timelines, across ticketing platforms and empty arena photographs, is not a passing wave of frustration. This is a structured, coordinated, financially consequential fan revolution. And if the WNBA does not understand the severity,
there's an overhead shot of this game, and you can already see there were a ton of empty seats in this place. A ton. And my goodness, this overhead shot, literally, the account that put this out, tons of empty seats, and this was pre-halftime. Correct. There was about 5 minutes left before the half when this shot...
Of what is happening before this regular season tips off, they will squander the most lucrative commercial opportunity in the 30-year history of this sport. Let's break down exactly what is happening, why it is happening, and why the league's current response is making everything catastrophically worse. Everything starts here. If you want to understand the temperature of this fan base right now, you have to start with the issue that is generating the most visceral, most emotionally charged reaction from the most people. And that is the complete, systematic failure of officiating to protect the players who are actually selling tickets. The WNBA was handed something extraordinarily rare in professional sports. They were handed a generational talent who transcends the sport itself. Caitlin Clark is not simply a great basketball player. She is a cultural phenomenon, a paradigm-shifting offensive force, a figure whose presence single-handedly restructured the league's broadcast deals, its jersey sales, its social media metrics, and its entire trajectory as a business enterprise. Every arena she steps into sells out. Every game she participates in draws television audiences that rival established professional leagues. She is, by every measurable commercial standard, the engine currently powering the entire WNBA economic machine. And the officiating crews are allowing her to be physically assaulted on a nightly basis without consequence. This is not hyperbole. This is what fans are watching with their own eyes. The hip checks, the grabs off the ball, the deliberate physical contacts that would draw immediate whistles in virtually any other professional basketball setting, occurring repeatedly in plain sight while referees stand completely motionless. The new collective bargaining agreement included specific provisions designed to eliminate exactly this kind of grabbing and holding that had become endemic to the game. Those provisions are apparently decorative. The fan community is not asking for Clark to receive special treatment. They are asking for the rules the league itself agreed to, negotiated, and announced with considerable fanfare to actually be enforced. WNBA legend Candace Parker said it plainly and publicly. Clark needs to be officiated the way Stephen Curry is officiated. When the Golden State Warriors deployed Curry as the centerpiece of their offensive system, the NBA understood that protecting that player's ability to function was not optional. It was fundamental to the product's integrity. The WNBA has not learned this lesson, and the fans are furious because they understand the mathematics. They understand what a catastrophic injury to the league's most commercially valuable player would mean for ticket sales, for broadcast ratings, for sponsorship revenue, for everything the league has spent the last 3 years building. They are not simply emotional supporters watching their favorite player get hurt. They are consumers who recognize that the product they are investing in is being recklessly mismanaged at the most basic operational level. The demand is not complicated. Blow the whistle. Enforce the rules you wrote. Protect the players who are responsible for the revenue growth you keep celebrating in your press releases. This is the floor, not the ceiling. If the officiating crisis is the match, then the Indiana Fever's roster construction is the gasoline. The Indiana Fever, in the span of 2 consecutive drafts, assembled 2 of the most commercially and athletically significant players the league has ever seen. They drafted Aliyah Boston, a foundational, defensively elite, high IQ post player who represents everything a franchise cornerstone.
Side of losing the announcers, the clarity was real good. So there's that. Crisp picture, just no audio outside of the 2,000 fans that were screaming. Wow. I gotta tell you, guys, I think this season is going to surprise a lot of people, and maybe not in such a great way at all.
And then they drafted Caitlin Clark, the player who transformed the franchise from an afterthought into the most-watched team in the league. By any objective standard, the Fever won the franchise lottery twice. And then the front office looked at that lottery ticket and proceeded to build the roster equivalent of a house of cards around it. The fans watched in real time as the Indiana Fever benched the reserve unit, the depth. The players whose job is to hold leads while the stars rest surrendered 36 points in a single quarter against the Dallas Wings. 36 points in 1 quarter from a bench unit. In a league where the entire shot clock is shorter and possessions are compressed, that is not a bad stretch. That is a structural catastrophe. That is what happens when you have collected the most attention-grabbing front court in the sport and then surrounded it with players who simply do not possess the professional skill level required to compete when the stars are unavailable. The fans are not asking for a championship roster built overnight. They understand that roster construction is complicated, that the salary cap has limitations, that development takes time. What they are asking for, what they are demanding, is evidence of basic professional competence. They want to see a front office that can identify the obvious need for reliable two-way wing players and experienced backup guards, and then go acquire them through the trade market, through free agency, through whatever mechanisms exist. They want to see a front office that watches a 36-point quarter from the bench and responds with urgency rather than inertia. Because here is the thing, the Fever's front office may not fully appreciate. The fans who showed up last season did not develop an attachment to the Indiana Fever as an institution. They developed an attachment to watching Caitlin Clark and Aliyah Boston compete at the highest possible level. If the surrounding roster prevents those players from competing at that level, if every time the starters sit, the game becomes unwatchable, those fans will simply find something else to watch. The emotional investment is in the talent, not the franchise. And talent cannot carry a team through 40 minutes every single night without burning out. The demand from the fan base is accountability. When a general manager demonstrably fails to execute the fundamental responsibility of roster construction around a generational talent, that person should not be collecting a paycheck while the franchise wastes the most valuable window it has ever had. Forward-thinking, analytically literate executives who understand how modern pace and space basketball actually works need to be in these decision-making seats. And they need to be held to a standard that reflects the commercial stakes of the moment. For roughly 2 decades, the WNBA operated on an unspoken but deeply effective marketing principle. The league cultivated a fan base of dedicated supporters who bought tickets and merchandise not purely because the on-court product was consistently excellent, but because they genuinely wanted women's professional basketball to exist and thrive. These were fans who understood they were participating in something fragile and important. They tolerated inconsistency because the alternative, the league disappearing, was unacceptable to them. That era is over. It ended the moment Caitlin Clark's name was called at the 2010 WNBA draft. The phenomenon that followed that draft introduced millions of new consumers to this league. These are not the same fans who bought tickets out of solidarity with the project of women's professional sports. These are entertainment consumers operating by the straightforward logic of every other sports marketplace. Is the product worth my money and my time? They are applying the same calculus they apply to any other entertainment investment. Is this worth $100 for opening night tickets? Is this worth 3 hours of my Saturday? Is this worth a jersey purchase and a cable subscription and all the other ways fans financially express their investment in a sport? When the answer is yes, they show up in overwhelming numbers. When the answer is no, they disappear, not out of malice, not as a coordinated protest, simply because they are consumers, and consumers move toward value and away from its absence. The $12 ticket situation at the Fever preseason game was the most visible illustration of this dynamic. A franchise that was selling out arenas, that was generating waitlists and secondary market premiums, was unable to fill seats at a price point that barely covers parking. That is not a fluke, and it is not a weather event. It is the market responding to a product that felt undercooked and disrespected. Fans watched several weeks of preseason basketball that raised legitimate questions about roster depth, coaching adjustments.
Couple things pretty evident tonight, I would say, during this game. Lack of depth, and clearly, look, before everybody starts saying, oh, but that was right before halftime, blah, blah, blah. Listen, I know some of you are going to try to support this. That's great. But, I'm supporting the team and trying to, but that doesn't mean fans aren't right. That doesn't mean fans...
And officiating consistency. And when it came time to purchase tickets for a game that did not feel like a premium experience, they kept their wallets closed. This is the new reality, and the league's front offices need to internalize it immediately. The economics of the Caitlin Clark era are more sophisticated than the economics of the previous era. Yes, the upside is enormous: sold-out arenas, record broadcast deals, national sponsors writing large checks. But the downside risk is also real. These new consumers do not have 20 years of emotional investment in the league's survival. They have 12 months of Clark highlights and rapidly developing expectations. Fail to meet those expectations, fail to deliver a professional, well-officiated, well-constructed product, and they will redirect their entertainment spending without a second thought. The league earned its way into this moment through the hard work of players, coaches, and the existing fan base over 3 decades. But the financial transformation of the last 2 years happened because of a specific kind of consumer who operates by specific rules. Respect those rules or accept the consequences. When a sports franchise fails on the court, when a bench unit gives up a historically bad stretch, when a roster construction decision is exposed as inadequate in real time, There is a right way and a wrong way to respond to the fan base's anger. The right way is transparency. Acknowledge the problem publicly. Speak to it honestly. Tell the fans you understand what they saw, that you share their frustration, and that you are actively working to address the specific deficiencies. This approach treats the consumer as an intelligent adult who deserves honesty. It may be uncomfortable in the short term, but it builds the kind of trust that sustains organizations through difficult periods. The wrong way is to log onto social media the morning after the brutal loss and post an artificially generated hype video designed to manufacture excitement that the game itself failed to generate. That is what the Indiana Fever organization chose to do. And the reaction from the fan base was not confusion, it was fury. Because that response did not just fail to address the legitimate concerns, it actively communicated that the front office does not believe it owes the fan base a real conversation. It communicated a kind of contempt dressed up in digital aesthetics. We will dazzle you with production value and hope you forget what you watched last night. These fans know what they watched. They have timestamps, replay footage, and analytical breakdowns available at their fingertips at all times. They are not waiting for the front office to tell them whether the bench was a problem. They already ran the numbers themselves. When the organizational response to that demonstrated knowledge is a computer-generated hype reel, the message received is, "We do not take you seriously as participants in this organization's future." Authenticity is not optional in this environment. The new WNBA fan base grew up consuming media that rewards transparency and punishes spin. They have seen behind enough corporate curtains to recognize when they are being managed rather than spoken to. The front office executives who understand this, who are willing to stand at a podium after a hard loss and say specifically what went wrong, and specifically what they intend to do about it, will build genuine, durable loyalty with this fan base. The executives who retreat into PR language and deflective content strategies will accelerate exactly the kind of disenchantment they are trying to prevent. None of this dysfunction exists in a vacuum. Organizations reflect their leadership, and the leadership situation at the very top of the WNBA structure is, by any honest assessment, in crisis. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert has been the public face of the league's historic growth period, and she has leaned heavily into that narrative. Revenue metrics, broadcast deals, expansion announcements, these are the talking points her office has delivered repeatedly and with considerable confidence. On a purely financial dashboard level, some of those numbers are real. The league has grown. The money has increased. But the story that those metrics do not tell is the one the players are telling. Elite athletes like Nafisa Collier have been direct and public about their belief that the WNBA has the worst leadership in professional sports. That is not a throwaway quote from a frustrated player after a bad loss. That is a considered, public statement from a franchise player at the peak of her career, who has chosen to use her platform to communicate something specific about how the league operates. The CBA negotiations that concluded recently were so fractious, so adversarial, so close to complete collapse that they nearly resulted in a lockout that would have canceled the 2026 season entirely. The commissioner's response to a reporter asking how long she intended to stay in her role on draft night, publicly labeling the question as sexist, became a viral moment for entirely the wrong reasons. The comparison she drew between the league's player housing accommodations and her adult children paying rent became an instant symbol of executive tone deafness. And then there was the WNBA Finals, on national television, with cameras capturing a crowd that was visibly, vocally expressing its displeasure with league leadership in terms that had to be digitally obscured before the broadcast could continue. When fans are communicating that directly, that publicly, that emphatically at the championship game, the league's most prominent annual showcase that is not an isolated incident, that is an institution-wide message. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, when asked whether Engelbert would be returning, declined to confirm. That is a quiet vote of no confidence from the most powerful figure in professional basketball. The players know it. The fans know it. The media knows it. The league cannot sustain a genuine growth era with this level of disconnection between its highest leadership and the people, players, and fans alike who are actually powering its commercial ascent. Accountability must exist at every level of the organization, and it has to start at the top. A commissioner who takes victory laps on financial growth, while the players who generate that growth are staging protests at the All-Star game, has a fundamental misalignment between her public narrative and the operational reality of the league she oversees. We are now standing at the threshold. The regular season is about to begin. The most scrutinized opening night in the 30-year history of this league is hours away. Every major sports media outlet in the country will have cameras pointed at this moment. Every casual observer who was brought into the fold by the Clark phenomenon will be watching to see whether the product lives up to the cultural significance the league has been claiming. This is not a soft deadline. This is not a situation where the league can deliver a flawed opening and then course correct over a few weeks. The new consumer base does not operate on patient timelines. They form opinions quickly, and they act on those opinions immediately. If the first nationally televised regular season game delivers the same concerns that the preseason raised, inconsistent officiating, visible roster inadequacy, empty premium seats, and corporate spin in the postgame, the momentum that took 2 years to build will begin evaporating in real time. The fans have made their demands clear. They are not asking for perfection. They are asking for the minimum standards of a professional sports product that respects its consumer base. Protect the stars. The players who are selling these tickets, Clark, Boston, and every other elite talent who draws eyeballs to this league, need to be able to play basketball without being physically punished by players exploiting an officiating crew that refuses to enforce its own written rules. This is the most urgent demand, and it has the simplest solution. Call the fouls that exist. Start there. Build real rosters. Every franchise general manager needs to look at their depth chart right now and answer one honest question. If our best 2 or 3 players are on the bench simultaneously, can our reserve unit hold a game together for 8 minutes? If the answer is no, that is a problem that cannot be explained away with practice footage and motivational content. It needs to be solved with personnel decisions, and it needs to be solved now. Respect the consumer. $12 tickets in a full arena is a successful game. $12 tickets with a half-empty upper bowl is a catastrophic signal that needs to be treated with seriousness and urgency, not suppressed with social media content. The consumer is the only source of revenue this league has. Treating the consumer's intelligence with contempt is a business strategy with a very predictable conclusion. Communicate honestly, after wins and after losses, in good weeks and in difficult ones. Fans can handle bad news. What they cannot handle, what is driving the current revolution, is the sensation of being managed rather than informed. Give them the real conversation, and they will remain invested. Give them corporate packaging around a product that disappointed them, and they will leave. Hold every level of leadership accountable. From the general managers who build the rosters, to the coaches who deploy them, to the commissioner who shapes the institutional culture, every decision-maker in this organization needs to understand that the expanded, newly economically powerful fan base is watching everything. The era of operating in the comfortable shadows of a niche product is over. This is a major league now, or it is on the verge of being one. Major leagues are run with major league professionalism. The WNBA is not failing. Let me be precise about that. The infrastructure of growth is real. The broadcast deals are real. The cultural penetration is real. The commercial potential of this moment, if properly managed, is genuinely historic. But potential is not achievement. And this fan base is done giving credit for potential while watching preventable failures play out on the court, in the front office, and at the commissioner's podium. The revolution happening right now, in comment sections, in empty arena photographs, in $12 ticket prices that still couldn't fill a building, This is not noise. This is signal. This is the market communicating with perfect clarity about what it needs in order to sustain its investment. The league can hear it and respond with genuine urgency. Or it can reach for another hype video. One of those choices leads to the most successful era in women's professional basketball history. The other closes a window that may never open again. The ball is in the league's court. We are simply explained. And we cover what the corporate press releases refuse to say. If this breakdown gave you something the mainstream coverage missed, subscribe right now and hit the notification bell, because when opening night tips off, we will be the first ones telling you what it actually means. Drop in the comments, what is the one change the WNBA needs to make right now to prove this league is serious about this moment? We read every single one.